Okay. Let me get this to go full screen.
The signal I'm getting is full screen.
It's weird.
Off tilt on that one, but not that one.
Yeah, you're good on that projector.
Interesting.
If I move to that side of the room, watch it.
Yeah. Is it good? Can everybody tolerate this on this side? No?
Well, I don't know what we'll do to fix it, so
Yeah.
we can move.
Okay. So, can everyone hear me okay? All right, awesome. So, I am Joe Gray. This is OSINT for the win. Basically, I'm going to talk to you about how to do better penetration testing through your social engineering attacks using open source intelligence. So, about me, I'm an enterprise security consultant at Sword and Shield. I was in the Navy. I navigated submarines. I didn't touch IT per se. I've got a few certifications. I write blogs for anyone who's willing to listen. As noted in the introduction, I do have a blog and a podcast at advancedpersistentsecurity.net. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Before I moved to Tennessee from Georgia, I taught Introduction to Cybersecurity, Information Security, and Introduction to Computing in colleges. So, with this presentation, I want to talk to you about what is open source intelligence, OSINT, social engineering in terms of what kind of social engineering you can perform, such as pretexting, the various types of ishing, as you can see up there, whaling, baiting, dumpster diving. We're not going to get too much into those. I just want you to be aware of those as possible vectors. We'll do some applied social engineering. Then we'll talk about enabling better social engineering through open source intelligence, mitigation, and if we have time, we'll talk about training your teams for prevention. So, to talk about social engineering, what is it? In essence, it's human hacking. It is trying to get the target to either give you information or perform an action they wouldn't do so otherwise. So, that typically bypasses your normal security controls because in reality you can spend $500,000, $5 million, $5 billion on technology, but if you can get a user to click something and actually let that perform an action or change the firewall rule for you, you've negated it. So here's a few books I recommend. You definitely Christopher Hadnagy's Social Engineering, Dr. Robert Cialdini's Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, and then we can't talk social engineering without mentioning Kevin Mitnick. So, The Art of Deception is another good one. With that being said, we have the pioneers of the art. I've mentioned three of them already. In the top left, you have Kevin Mitnick. The top right, you have Dr. Cialdini. The bottom right, you have Christopher Hadnagy. And then you have Frank Abagnale on the bottom left of Catch Me If You Can fame. He is who Leonardo DiCaprio depicted. So that was basically the story of his life, and since he's done his time, he's now a consultant for the FBI. He designs secure checks and does other things on the white hat side now. So moving on into examples of social engineering. We always hear about phishing, but then there's also spear phishing, which that's what this primarily is going to address because you're going to hone in on a specific target. Whaling, which is social engineering, the big fish, your C-level, your senior management. Vishing, which is voice phishing. Smishing, which is text message phishing. Baiting, that could be dropping USBs that say bonus data or layoffs or something like that to get someone to get curious and plug it in and then let it do your deed for you. Pretexting, which is basically when you take on a persona, which is exactly why we see Daniel Day-Lewis here. He's a method actor. With him, when he's portraying a character, he stays in character. I didn't know until I was actually researching for this talk, but when he filmed The Crucible, he did not bathe for 3 months because that was the norm in that time frame. While it's a good movie, I'm glad I didn't have to be around him because if he ever went to DEF CON, he would learn the 3-2-1 rule, right? So with that being said, dumpster diving and tailgating are also options. So with social engineering and how this wraps into applied psychology, we have the 6 principles of persuasion, and this is the main idea of Dr. Cialdini's book, which he has more since then, but this book in particular, it's one of the most heavily cited books in the social engineering, applied psychology fields. So reciprocity, commitment or consistency, social proof, likability, authority, urgency, scarcity. Think of the last time you bought a used car. The used car salesman might say something like, someone was just here to look at this car. They went to the bank to try to get financing. You must act now. Principle number 6. Or, man, imagine the chicks you would pick up in this car. Social proof. Or the other day I was at lunch and I overheard 2 gentlemen having a business lunch, and one of them said, oh, let me pick up this tab for you. And the gentleman, who I assume was the one that was the prospective buyer, refused. So the sales guy was like, oh, well, come on, I'll get the next one. I would really like you to come to this event. So basically he was trying to perform reciprocity, but he was getting shut down. So ultimately, there's just various ways that you could look at this that would actually appeal to the human psyche, right? So as I stated before, it's all about influencing people. There's a difference between influence and manipulation, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But ultimately, you're trying to get users to give you some sort of data. Ideally, you want sensitive data. You want the keys to the kingdom. You want, if you're pretexting as a user of a bank, you want that person on the other end of the phone to give you that person's bank account number. You want them to reset their username or their password to whatever you tell them to so that you can log in, which that's actually part of performing an action. But you want to find out something that's not online and readily available. Sometimes you don't necessarily get the information you're looking for, but, oh, I'm sorry, you can't provide me that. Can you tell me who would be a better point of contact, a little bit more knowledgeable, that could give me more information? A better target? Hey, that's just as good as the keys to the kingdom. And then, as Jason mentioned earlier, you can find out about the operating environment. What problems are you facing with your Active Directory? Oh, you don't use Active Directory? You use OpenLDAP? Really? Or whatever. What operating systems, what problems are you facing? You can easily go that route. With performing an action, clicking a link, making a change to firewall rules, open an email, whatever. So, talking about open source intelligence, I actually got this definition from the CIA. Coincidentally, this did not come from WikiLeaks. This was done before everything dropped on the WikiLeaks about the CIA. But basically, some places you can get open source intelligence. You've got the internet. That's basically the mother lode. Traditional mass media. Some things might not be on the internet. It might be an old obscure newspaper from years ago. That's definitely an option. Specialized journal, conference proceedings. People always like to talk about what's new and hip at conferences. I mean, we're at a conference. So conference proceedings sometimes have very detailed information. If nothing else, it'll give you some context to be able to strike up a conversation with someone and be able to appeal to those 6 principles later. Photos, of course. Anyone who was at DerbyCon this last year, you might remember Josh Huff's talk where he extracted the metadata out of the reflection from, well, out of the picture with the reflection of the gas pump, and he determined what kind of car it was. That's exactly it. I always laugh because I don't have a good relationship with my dad, but he posted to Facebook a while back using his Android phone a picture off his front porch bragging about he had moved to the mountains and he was off the grid. Where's the logic in that? So we're not friends on Facebook, but I laughed about it nonetheless. And then, of course, geospatial intelligence, geospatial information. Google Maps is an excellent resource because sometimes you need to know, my target organization, do they have a fence? Where are their dumpsters? Where's the smoking area? Whether you smoke or not, whether you vape or not, that's a great place to collect information. When I was an auditor for the Department of Defense, I smoked very heavily at the time, but even if I didn't, I would probably have still went to the area just to find out, because I found out so many things, so many projects that were underway that IT was not even aware of. Like, other business units were doing things in Google's public cloud and not telling us. So it's definitely useful. OSINT pioneers, there's really only one. And with that, you've got Michael Basil. So he's written some books. He's got his own podcast with Justin Carroll, the Complete Privacy and Security Podcast. Volume 2 of that book is coming out, I believe, this year. Open Source Intelligence Techniques, 5th edition just came out. I've heard that's the final rendition. So where can you get it, aside from what we've already mentioned? How many times have you been sitting in a bar? I mean, for those in attendance today that was at the Hilton last night, think of the conversations we could have overheard and what we could have done with that. I mean, the couple that was over in the corner smooching all night, we could have probably learned a lot about them. Probably from the sweet nothings that he was whispering. I don't know. Think of all the times that you've been in the mall and you hear someone just giving their credit card number over the phone because their account's locked out or something. Restaurants, of course, it's just like the story I told you earlier. I was sitting in Taste of Thai in Knoxville, Tennessee, hearing people go on about their business deal and how they're planning on franchising something out and making $150,000 a pop. Even if you don't have social media, your family and friends do. And for that, I can collect open source intelligence about you through them. Again, back to Jason's talk this morning, it's all about pivoting to those around you. It's your ecosystem. If you don't have social media or you have it ultra locked down, you still have to worry about your mom posting embarrassing pictures. It's a fact of life. You have to worry about people asking your friends and family questions about you that they could use against you later. And they could be absolutely benign, harmless seeming questions, but nonetheless. I like the back windshield approach. We're going to talk about that on the next slide, but just know that this one right here puzzles me. I really don't understand what's going on with that family down there. It's in Baltimore, so the person that took it, they live in Baltimore, but I don't know. They may have been driving back from Maury Povich or Jerry Springer. I am not sure, but I'm really interested to find out what's going on with that family. With this one, you can tell he's a veteran. With this one, traveling sports team. They all have websites. Those websites, they list the team's schedule. You can take the data, which we'll talk about on the next slide, and determine the probability of people being at home during that traveling team's sports schedule. If you wanted to break in, well, there's your time. What better time than then? Looking at a good example of open source intelligence, the number of times I've almost wrecked after doing this analysis the first time from trying to analyze the car in front of me and then them rapidly slowing down. I think they're on to me. But either way, with this, you can look at the family and you can easily build a profile on it, right? So Dad's, he might be in shape or he might just think he's in shape. Either way, you might find Dad at the gym after work or very early in the morning. Mom's a teacher. So if you're gonna try something with that family, you're not gonna want to do it in the summer. She's probably home. But if you're gonna do it Monday through Friday between the hours of, say, 9 and 2, you have a pretty good chance of success. John plays soccer. John looks big enough to possibly be old enough for a high school sports team. They practice 3 to 5 days a week. Nobody's going to be home after school because Mom's still grading papers. Neil's probably at the skate park, so if you go with a Thrasher shirt and some Vans, you might be able to talk some Tony Hawk with him and get some information out of him as well. The part that confuses me the most would be Jessica. I'm not sure if Jessica is old enough to babysit herself. I don't know about her extracurricular activities. We don't know a lot about her because of that. And then with Beaker and Ruby, we don't know what breeds they are. Ruby's a hound, well, looks to be a hound. So Ruby might be really loud if you're trying to do something around the house. Beaker, who knows? I mean, Beaker could be a Great Dane or a Chihuahua. We don't know. So when you're dealing with attacks, dealing with the human element, it's all about timing. You can't talk timing without having some Flava Flav. Mr. Cogsworth and, of course, Father Time, because it's applicable to both. In the Navy, we use the term slow is fast. And that didn't mean that you needed to be ridiculously slow to do anything, because when there's a fire, you need to move quickly to perform the actions that you're responsible for performing to ensure that everyone is able to live to make it back to the next port. But you don't do it at such a pace that you become reckless. So when you're doing this, you might have to do several rounds. If you're doing it fast, you might miss a lot of things that you might find if you're going a little bit slower and more methodical. It's all about the persistence and the details, because that's where the vitality lies. You might need to do several rounds of the same analysis on the same target, because you might get something to refine that information each round. You might get a kid's name, a phone number, an employer, a place of business, something to work off of further. And then the faster you go, you're going to be sloppier. So to talk about how they mesh, they're similar in terms of human psychology, and you use your open source intelligence to build the dossier. That's going to provide better context for you talking to them. If you're going to go to the bar you know they hang out at, if you have some sort of context to talk to them about, that's going to be to your advantage. You can do better spear phishing, and then even better password guessing. There's a tool out on GitHub called Passwordology. It's spelled P-W-D-L-O-G-Y. It actually takes information that you input about your target and creates an intelligent password list about them. So take that for what it is. So at this point, we're going to talk a little bit about Facebook and Facebook Live, because we cannot talk social media without talking Facebook. We can't talk open source intelligence without talking social media. So we'll just look here really quick. This is a Facebook Live map. It's at facebook.com/live. States aren't showing up for, oh, here we go. Oh, here's something in Indianapolis. Let's zoom in and see what's going on here. We might be able to get some data from it. There's a few things going on. So, waiting for it to load here. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and prep the next steps. And the next steps. So, for whatever reason, this could be the two videos, unsure. And keep in mind, I am connected to the internet through my phone, so it might be a little slow. So for that, I apologize. So with this, okay, here we go. Okay, so they're living, right? Nothing big, no harm or foul. I mean, people are live. More people are live. So here's what we're looking for. We don't care about what they're talking about at this point. Here's what we care about. This is called the video ID. And here is Michael Basil's Intel Techniques website. If you go right here to the bottom and under video data, it's going to take you to this PHP file that he has operating on his site. And here we see all of the data about people on Facebook Live publicly. Well, not everyone, but people within reason. It's like the most viewed ones. So this may not work. It did. Look right here what we have. There's a latitude and a longitude. I don't mind if I do. So from there, we go here. See where he is. Okay. Let's get a better look. I'm not familiar with Indianapolis, so it might be something really obvious, but it might not be. I don't know. Well, he's somewhere in this area. So, he could be right here at this house. So I did this on a politically affiliated website a while back. Someone was, the talk was just absolutely hammering the snowflakes in Berkeley into the ground. It was a conservative-leaning website. So I did the same analysis on them, and I found that the lady was broadcasting from her home in Greenville, South Carolina. She lived in a cul-de-sac, had a white Yukon and a black Mercedes SUV. So, yeah. And there was no denying that it was her house because she was the only house in the cul-de-sac. So, be careful what you do publicly. I've not tested this to determine if you're using a proxy or a VPN, if that negates anything, but it's definitely, certainly an option. And I'm just starting something for the next part of the demonstration. So moving on back to the talk itself. So most of this starts with a single piece of information. You know your target. You know the business or the organization's name. You might know the person's name. When I have numbers that call me that I don't recognize, I try to run the intelligence on them. Most of the time they're spoofed, so it doesn't do any good. You might have an email address. You might have a physical address, a username, or some sort of metadata from like a photo. I always like to talk about the surveys. Think of when you're walking around through the mall or through a store and, hey, do you have 5 minutes to do a survey? We're going to randomly select someone for a $500 Amazon gift card, right? Think of the information they are asking for. They're asking for things that you can use to reset passwords, that could use to be to further advance other attacks. You don't know what they're going to do in terms of destroying the survey you write the data on. Honestly, I would be surprised if anyone ever actually won that $500 Amazon gift card. Honestly. But, sorry Salesforce if you're still in the room. I know there was a Salesforce employee earlier. But it's the core of marketing. This is what Salesforce is about. Facebook, you are the product. The same goes with Google. I mean, they're both excellent products, but they're not products. We are the products. The users of Facebook, the users of Google, those are the products. Retail stores. Think back to the story about Target. There was a young lady that had a rewards card through Target. She started receiving coupons for baby formula and diapers. Mind you, she was 16 years old. Dad sees the coupons and starts poking around, prodding, asking questions. Oh, no, Dad, I'm not pregnant. I'm not pregnant. Took a pregnancy test. Yes, she was. Target realized before she knew or her dad knew because her shopping habits had changed. And while that's not true open source intelligence, it's closed for the most part, it's still intelligence. It's an example of how it can be applied. So you've got to pull that yarn a little bit more. To quote Weezer, just pull the string as I walk away. And with that, things can be linked to you. Password dumps. Have I been pwned is a great place. Before it went away, leaked source. For $4, you had 24 hours of access to leaked passwords, like actual passwords in some cases. Sometimes it was only the hash. Nonetheless, it's not hard to crack a hash if you have a little context around it. Email accounts, again, public records, court records, the news. Because I've appeared on the local news in Tennessee, I could never hide from the internet again. Because I'm speaking here today, I can never hide from the internet again. It's okay. Blogs, well, can't hide there either. Websites, same thing. Employer posts and data. Press releases. For publicly traded companies, SEC filings, Form 10K, it's a beautiful thing. And then, of course, friends on social media. As I said before, this is not one and done. You might need several rounds. You might be at the final stage of your intelligence gathering, and you might find something that's like, you know what, I need to go back and apply this into my analysis and use it to gather more information. You might need to do that to look at it from a different angle. You might not have thought about something. At this point, we kind of reiterate the 6 principles: reciprocity, commitment, consistency, social proof, likability, authority, urgency, scarcity. Think about malware. You need to click this and you need to pay us money because the FBI says you need to. Or the phone calls. This is the IRS. You need to pay us in Apple gift cards. Calling from a Miami phone number. When did you move from DC to Miami? Okay. But anyway, So at this point, we apply those principles. You know enough about the person you're after. So when you're sending them the phishing email, you have the context. You know what they're going to click on. It's like the example Jason provided earlier with, hey, I had a really good time at my going away party. My vacation was great. I'm settling into North Carolina. By the way, this happened. Link out of nowhere, and then blah, 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 blah. You have enough context to make them think that that link is associated with it. You don't have to say it, you just have to infer it. And then, of course, pretexting and impersonation. In my current role, I actually do some pretexting and impersonation. I've dealt with some financial institutions, some manufacturing companies, so on. And you just have to get into character. The first client that we dealt with, we had this story. We had a baby crying in the background. We were in Walmart. We needed some account information. We really had to do this. It didn't work. So we called an audible. We spoofed an internal number from legal, and we called their CFO, and we said that, hey, so-and-so that we go to church with, he's trying to get an internship with the FBI. You know, we got robbed a few months ago. He needs some data about the financial impact of a bank robbery. He's reached out to SunTrust, Fifth Third, and BB&T, and they all shot him down. Can you help? Oh, yeah, I sure can. I sure can, Miss Such and Such. Okay, excellent. What email address do I give him? Because this company was in Tennessee, I actually had to use my authentic Tennessee accent because that's where I'm from. It took a long time for me to actually get away from it as this. It took about 7 years of being in the Navy to do that. But anyway, my email address is such and such at somewhere. Okay, about 7 minutes and 43 seconds later, I pressed send from a Gmail account, and it was nothing but a link to the survey. 15 clicks later on his work computer, 5 clicks on his cell phone later, he emails back and says, hey buddy, that link didn't work. Can you send it to me as a file? Yes, we can. So there goes the macro-enabled Word document. Well, he emails back and says, hey, that opened up the first time, but it was really fuzzy. So I clicked that thing, and it was still fuzzy. So I thought my computer was broke, so I closed it, and I opened it again. Now my virus scanner won't let me open it. Do you have another file? Yes, we do. So next time, here comes an executable disguised as an Excel spreadsheet. I think you know where that story's going and what happened. Yeah. But then later on, like a manufacturing company, I called them as HR. And we had sent them emails from intimilrevenueservice.com. I had a bogus site for their HR company. So it worked perfectly. But, you know, we didn't get a lot of people to take the bait on that one. By a show of hands, who here has heard of this sinister website? It's quite possibly the most brutal attack tool known to man. It's called Family Tree Now. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to show you a little bit of fun I've had with, not with them, but at their expense. So, by a show of hands, who here's familiar with like Social Engineer Toolkit? Okay. So there's this really awesome function in it, and I'm about to show you, just for the giggles. I try to stay anti-cliche. But anyway, so right here we have the SE Toolkit, you know. Thank you, Adrian's parent company, for maintaining such a wonderful tool. Nonetheless, we're going to look at social engineering attacks, specifically website attack vectors, credential harvesting, and the site cloner. At this point, I'm just going to step through this. I'm not actually going to perform everything, but you just input the IP address. So I'm just going to give it, you know, home, no big deal. And then we'll do... So we do that, it's doing all that. Okay, good. Well, yeah, I don't have Apache running on this one, so you're not going to see anything here. So we'll just close that there. I'll go ahead and exit all that good stuff. But we do have the file hanging out here. Actually not there. So we do have it here. That's, you've got, you know, your index data here. So that index 1 or index2.html and index.html, that would be the data that's copied. So that's where Family Tree Now would exist. So anyway, in the other instance, basically I sent an email out from a domain that I do own, familytreenow.online. And basically it says that someone input information about you on Family Tree Now, and we would like you to validate it. Upon clicking it, there's also an opt-out option too, because that's always good. But anyway, it takes you here. For reference, the website has changed since I did this, but this is the real website. This is not the real website. But anyway, you can do all the stuff here, nothing big. I've taken all the links that would be for familytreenow.com out, and basically there's nothing there. But if you want to validate the information, let's look at what kind of information they want us to validate. Let's see here. There's first name, last four, date of birth, address, city, state, zip code, mother's first name, mother's maiden name, mother's last name, father's first name. Imagine what you can do with this. And then if you click submit, oh no, there's a payload. Oh no! Oh no! And this was built specifically for awareness type things, so I didn't want to get too sinister with it. You know, with Rick Astley, it's not too sinister. But nonetheless, that is a point. What also occurs during this time is there's a, I actually monitor the Apache logs, and when you hit validate, everything that you input in those fields is input into the GET request. So I capture it all in the Apache logs. So there it is. You know, I just navigate to that and it's there. Or if you want to opt out, it's, you know, you click here to opt out, and anybody want to guess what happens when you opt out? Oh no! It's him again! But nonetheless, I mean, that took almost no time at all. Realistically, the hardest part really was just stopping the Apache instance so it don't get detected. But anyway, it didn't take long. I just had to go through and do like some edit alls, nothing hardcore, to be able to put that together. And I've not got to use it in an engagement yet, but I have a feeling that whenever it goes, it's going to be pretty successful. But nonetheless, now that we're past the technical piece of it, we'll hit a little bit of mitigations and then start to finish up. So, can you effectively mitigate social engineering? That's a double-edged sword, and it's a philosophical debate. Honestly, some people are going to say yes, some people are going to say no, some people are going to say maybe. I come from the school of, for the most part, maybe. Because you can have technical mitigations like Proofpoint. That's going to tell you this email is coming from an external source. Even though it says it's internal, it's coming from an external source. That still relies on your users to actually not click it. If you make it juicy enough, I mean, in January, if you offer them a W-2, or if in November you offer them a free turkey, they're going to click it, straight up. Malware protection, if that's what they're going for, IDS signatures to some degree. User behavior analytics can actually kind of do that. But in all caps, having open source intelligence and social engineering campaigns against your employees, that is the most ideal mitigation. And I'm not a sales guy for Sword and Shield. You don't have to do it through Sword and Shield. You could do it through TrustedSec, Black Hills, anybody. It doesn't matter who. But it's usually better to have someone from the outside do it, especially the open source intelligence portion of it, because as a security professional within an organization, you do not want to betray your employees' trust. Let someone else be the bad guy. I mean, I just want to see things get better. If Sword and Shield makes money off of it, great. If somebody else does, awesome. No big deal. But then you have your administrative mitigations as well. Having policies in place, like your acceptable use policy, awareness, dealing with personal devices. That's definitely one as well. Standards of conduct. And again, awareness. Most importantly, train your people. Training is a low-cost solution that really it's not going to be 100% effective, but it's going to bring up the rear a little bit. You make it relatable to people. I like to use what's called the SMART framework: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. If you do that and you maintain their interest and show them how their actions impact the organization, you'll have a better outcome. Because realistically, insider threat, social engineering plays into that. I call people who are untrained that fall victim to social engineering, I call that passive insider threat. Active insider threat being someone with malicious intent. Nonetheless, you have your training recurring. You don't do the check the box once a year and move on. No. Because that's 364 days for them to forget. You do something weekly, monthly, quarterly, something. You have to have management commitment from the CEO to the janitor. If you have management commitment, that actually plays into the authority principle of persuasion. It will better persuade the people lower on the totem pole to actually do things to help your organization. Role-based training is also important. As an IT professional, if I get an email with an attachment, I'm probably not going to open it. If I worked in human resources and it said resume, yeah, I would. If it were accounting, if I were in accounting and it said invoice, you guessed it. Contracting. Management, I'm not saying they think they're above the rules, but management kind of thinks that they're immune to things, that they're untouchable, especially those with assistants. If you can make it through them, I mean, it's over and done with. Help desk. I mean, they're going to get calls and they're going to get solicited to reset passwords, create accounts, whatever. Non-technical personnel. And this is in addition to general training across the board. And your C-level suite and your senior management needs customized training as well, because they face different problems than the technical team, than HR, than everybody else, really. And this is the final rant about training. You need to clearly define who you want things to be reported to, how you want it to be reported, what you want people to do if they receive a fish, if they fall for the fish, if they fall victim. Because this actually falls into your incident response plan, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you. If you know where patient 0 is, your incident response process is going to speed up tremendously. With that being said, you need to let them know what to do with their computer. If they click a fish, do you want them to shut it down, pull the network cable, step away, lock the screen, do nothing? What? Do you want them to contact you via email, phone, walk over, carrier pigeon? What? You need to define that. And most importantly, a non-punitive policy. People are not prone to report if they think they're going to get in trouble. You reward those who do report, and those who report that they've done things, don't hold it against them. Obviously, if it becomes a trend and they're reporting something every week, you might want to consider something else. But an honest mistake here and there, no problem. But you need to be cautious with gamification. So if you have users that report, hey, I got this phishing email, hey, I got this, hey, I got this, eventually they're going to start signing up for phishing lists so they can get the prize, whatever the prize is, especially if you give them time off. So just understand what happened with Wells Fargo and the incentive program there with the fake accounts before you start gamifying something. I recommend things like a parking spot, free lunch, stickers, yellow stickies of appreciation. I'm a huge fan of those. Challenge coins, those work as well. I wouldn't appeal to a candy bar. I'm diabetic. I'd be like, what, are you trying to kill me? So with that being said, here's how you contact me. I'm on Twitter at C_3PJoe and also at ADVPersistSec. I'm on LinkedIn. There's my email addresses, my personal, well, my quasi-personal and my work one. Blogging the podcast is at advancedpersistentsecurity.net. Podcast is basically everywhere you can find podcasts. Any questions in the meantime? Questions, comments, complaints, grievances, thoughts, opinions? other statements? Okay, so I'm further obligated to show you this slide of here's how you contact Sword and Shield. So there's the address, social media. If you want a consultation, secure me at swordshield.com. And here's my further speaking engagements. If anyone's interested, I will be back at Circle City Con, and I will be giving open source intelligence and social engineering 4-hour training in addition to a talk. So again, any questions, anything of the sort? Okay. Thank you very much.